I'm happy to be here too. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I don't get an opportunity to talk to too many people like yourself, right? Who have risen to the top of an industry and are teaching, and who have done so right with considerable headwinds of in our culture.
Absolutely.
So I'm really excited to get your perspective on how a black man like you can reach the top in the healthcare industry, and I also want to talk about to help others, but also talk about like what's going on in the healthcare industry in general. It just seems like a real challenging time post COVID, right? For multiple
100%.
reasons. And I really just want to get to know you, and that's where we'll start. Like I really love to start these shows just by understanding kind of where you're from originally. What were some of the foundational things that happened in your life that shaped you, the challenges, the screw ups, and the successes that got you on your track, because it could go so many ways in life, right? Single
Absolutely. And
decision
I have a
here and a single bad influence there, and boy, man, we could be toast.
absolutely,
So,
and I have a bunch of those. So
yeah, me too. So yeah, just give us like a high level overview of the formation of
sure,
of
sure.
Errol.
So I always start with my father because he's been so instrumental in who I am. So he
Mm-hmm.
is a Haitian-born immigrant that somehow, some way, made it from a tiny town in Haiti called Gonaïves
Okay.
to New York City. And
Wow.
so obviously,
When was that, by the
Haiti,
way? Eight
1969,
69. That was
1969.
back when
So
Haiti wasn't even as bad as it is today. I mean, like that was probably it's gotten a lot worse,
yeah,
hasn't it?
it's definitely gotten worse. But when he was there, before he came over, there was a ruler that they called Baby Doc. He was the
I remember
son of
Baby
Papa
Doc.
Doc.
Yeah.
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 And so it was pretty bad back then, just there was a despotic, dictator that was ruling
Mm-hmm.
the country, and he somehow made it out to America as an immigrant and had a dream of being the most selfless man that I know to create
Wow.
me. So I start from that. So I grew up in New York, luckily, because if I was born and raised in Haiti, my total life would be totally different. So
For
luckily, I
sure.
was, born on these shores, land of the free, and just saw a man tirelessly work morning, noon, night. He left for work at 4 in the morning, came home after I was at bed, had multiple jobs, had a small business that he used to take me out to do, and I just watched this guy never complain, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really where I got my values from of around work ethic, because
Mm-hmm.
my worst day is nowhere near anything that he's ever it's like nothing, it's negligible compared to what he's went through.
Right.
So it puts
Wow.
things in perspective.
Amazing. Right.
Um, and he was cleaning offices, cleaning houses. He was making sometimes $5 an hour, when he first got here. And so when I hear minimum wage, like $15, it's it's
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
it's
Wow.
it's it's like I'll take that, compared to what my dad was going through. And he was selfless. He put my mom through school, so he was working full time while my mom went to pharmacy school. He put a roof over our head. We didn't, I didn't know that we were wanting anything until you compare yourself to your friends. But if I,
Mm-hmm.
didn't compare myself, I always had food, always had a shelter over my head. So that's how I grew up. Work hard, keep your head down, stay quiet.
Mm.
Be fortunate. Understand your blessings and understand how fortunate you are to be here. And that's kind of my foundation.
Wow.
Um,
Man, I just like to pause there because what you just said is just so powerful for anyone who's kind of dealing with the largesse of our society, and culturally we're at that time where like it seems pretty easy for a lot of people, like with the
yep.
technologies that we have and the amount of things that government does for you that people just take for granted that certainly weren't there in 1969, right?
100%.
And
Yeah.
just all this largesse. It's easy for younger people to take that for granted, and to then think that we just had that or your dad just had it growing up. It's
Yep.
not true. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I'll give you a story. So there was these shoes that used to light up when you walked. They would be like
I
these, I
remember
think they
those.
call them,
Yeah.
yeah, LA Gear lights or whatever. And I remember I wanted those shoes so bad because everyone at school had them. And my dad sat me down and said, um, I need to work, uh, 4 hours cleaning offices to buy that shoe. So I'll get it, but is that what you want? Because it's going to be 4 hours of us, vacuuming, taking out the trash. And so early age, I was 12, 13, 14, he didn't say no. He actually brought me into the decision making to say, these things don't
Hmm.
just grow on trees. Like
Right.
this is what it's going to take. And, I was like, do I want to have my dad work an extra 4 hours, or would I love him to maybe come home at 8 o'clock instead of midnight? And so that,
Hmm. No, that's
and
pretty
so it puts
cool.
things
That's
in, yeah,
powerful.
it puts things in perspective. And so I value everything I learned from him. And, one of the best teachers I ever had, regardless of all my academic
Right.
prowess, is one of the best, teachers I ever had.
So, how was school for you? Were you an academic type, or did you struggle with that at all?
Yeah, I was one that too smart for my own good. So I didn't do homework. I was distracted. I talked to other kids in class. I wanted to play outside, but I was smart. And
Hmm.
between my mother and a teacher, Mrs. Powell, who really just went over above and beyond, sat me down and was like, "You're going to squander this talent. You're a smart
Hmm.
kid. If it's too easy for you, that doesn't mean, you get distracted and distract other people. Let's give you different type of work so that you stay occupied." So
Hmm.
I was always a smart kid, but I didn't start utilizing it and realizing it till probably too late. So around, I'd say, end of middle school, early high school. In 10th grade, I started to get some semblance of seriousness around schooling, and that's because we
Hmm.
had these like state exams called Regencies.
Oh yeah, I'm
Um,
familiar with the Regents. Yeah.
and I was able to take a test, and my teacher was like, "Oh, you did really well. Like you should take another one. You should take another one." And so I stumbled into pre-calc and calculus as like a junior, and it was all because Mrs. Powell sat me down and was like, "You're going to squander this talent." So it took me a while to to
Mm.
use my intelligence, understand that I'm smart, not waste it, because what I was doing before that was just kind of being distracted and having
Right.
having fun, which I think most boys do, but
Yeah,
it took
for
me a while to
sure. But
understand
it's
it.
so cool that I mean, most of the people that I talk to have like one person like that, or two people. You know, your father, and then this teacher. It's incredible, for all of us to recognize the impact that we can have on someone if we care, right? So,
Yep,
and you may not know it actually, right? Like you may not know it,
100%. And we can
which is
be that person for other people. That's what I've
that's right.
learned to
That's what I'm
realize,
talking
is
about.
that
Yeah,
I never know I'm someone else's, tap on the shoulder. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah, to always be open to being in service to others, and you could change someone's life and never know it, and that's the beautiful thing, right?
100%,
Anyway, so
100%.
you went on to Fordham. Did you go there with a specific intent to study something,
Yeah.
or yeah, what was
Yeah,
that?
it's a great question. I would take the subway train, and as a high school student, and I would love seeing these guys in really fancy suits, pinstripe suits that were
I was one of
folding
them
in
for 4 years.
the that and they were folding New York Times papers like really
Uh huh.
big, and you'd
Oh
hear the
yeah.
paper full. And I'd be on the train as a kid, and I'm like, who? They look so important. Their shoes are shiny, the suits look tight, they look very, like they make a lot of money, and they look so important with this newspaper. Like, who are they? And so I went to Fordham with a major in business finance, and I was like, I want to be those guys in a suit. That was my kind of angle, not knowing exactly what they do.
That's awesome.
I was like, they look like they have money, they look sharp, they have this
The
vibe
funny
around
thing
them, and I
is,
was like,
if they really had a lot of money, they wouldn't be riding the subway.
absolutely, absolutely. So I was like, I'm gonna do business. I didn't know what that meant. I was like, I'll pick finance. And that's how I kind of went to Fordham. And I also had a track scholarship, so I ran D1
Oh,
um,
wow. Well, that's cool.
winter and spring track as well.
Right.
And I wanted to be in Fordham because I definitely wanted to be in New York City. I knew I wanted to go to college with the
Mm-hmm.
city being in my campus, as opposed to like some of the big schools that are kind of far away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's how I got into college, and um, with business, to me, it turned into solving puzzles. So I
Mm-hmm.
loved the fact that math always has an answer, and you're either right or you're wrong. Like the
Right.
classes that I used to take where it was like subjective and you have to give your opinion, and the
Mm-hmm.
professor could say, I think you're all right, but there was like no right answer. I was like, I don't like this. Like, I like a rubric where it's like,
Right.
tell me the answer. I either solved it or I didn't. And so math really spoke to me. Solving, it was like a puzzle to me, solving problems. And in finance, it just made even more sense to say, okay, like there's a solution. Like, when you do accounting, there's
Mm-hmm.
there's a solution on the left side. You have to see it on the right side. So that really just spoke to me, and I ended
Mm-hmm.
up excelling at finance and stuff. So that's kind of what I did. I was also working part time um, while I was at school. So I was doing track, my academics, and working part time as well. So I was always staying busy, which I think I learned from my dad, just the work
Yeah.
ethic and just get it done type of thing.
Yeah. Josh, it just reminded me of my time in New York City. I was at NYU getting my MBA and and working for Coopers and Lybrand full time.
Hmm.
And I wasn't in a sport because I was at graduate school, but I would run in the morning and go to the gym at lunch and go to the martial arts studio in between work and school.
There you go. There you go. Scholar athlete.
Scholar athlete, yeah. And then I became a warrior, threw it all away. But hey, that's a whole different story.
That's very cool.
So after Fordham, did you get into the workforce for a while, or did you continue education? What was your path up to that?
Yep. So graduated Fordham. While I was there, I had an internship at the largest health insurance company in New York, Empire Blue
Mm-hmm.
Cross Blue Shield.
Mm-hmm.
How I got that internship is it's an amazing story. So um, I decided to work at a beauty supply store, and people always ask me like, how did you end up there? What happened was I used to teach karate when I was in high
Nice.
school.
Right.
One of the students that I had, because I was a black belt, so I was a senpai, so I was teaching younger kids
Mm-hmm.
as I was training myself. And one of the younger kids I had, their parent just really loved me. Like, he's like, my kid has so much discipline. Thank you for spending time with them. Thanks for focusing on them. They're just growing up to be a nice young man, and I owe it to the fact that they're learning their discipline at your karate, at your dojo. And so he offered me a job. He's like, I was in high school, about to go to college. He's like, well, how do you make any money? Because you're teaching these classes for free. I was like, well, yeah, I would love a summer job. So he's like, okay, come work in my warehouse. So it was a beauty supply store and salon, and I started out just taking shampoo bottles and dropping them off at the salon. So they would put an order in, I'd get the order, pull it, and drop it with another driver.
Mm-hmm.
And me being nerdy, the nerdy guy I am, I was in the warehouse waiting for orders. So we just sit around sometimes for a couple hours doing nothing. I was like, let me read the back of these bottles. What are they? I was just, what's shampoo, what's conditioner, what's gel, all that kind of stuff. And I'm dropping off boxes. The owner of the store says, is helping a customer, and they're like, I'm looking for a shampoo that doesn't have lauryl sulfate. Lauryl sulfate is like the tough detergent in a shampoo that actually cleans your hair, but some people are allergic to it, so you have to find,
Mm-hmm.
sort of a natural
Mm-hmm.
shampoo that. And I knew what brand it was. I'm like, Paul
Yeah,
Brown. I was reading the
that's
back of the
awesome.
bottles. Paul Brown doesn't have lauryl sulfate. So I'm like with my hand truck dropping off boxes, and I'm like, oh, boss, I got Paul Brown in the truck. I can bring it in. He's like, wait, what?
That's awesome story.
And
How
he's
did you
like,
know that?
yeah. He's like, what? Like, totally out of the blue. How do you know that? I was like, I reorganized the warehouse to make things easier for when I pick up stuff. And while I'm opening boxes, I'm reading the bottles. He's like, it's amazing. So he's like, okay, well, get the box, bring it in, and you're not in the warehouse anymore. I need you in the front office. um,
That's great.
so that's how I moved to the front. That's how I moved to the front. And I was doing Saturday, Sunday. I was opening, closing. I was handling the money. He really, gave me way more responsibility after he kind of knew who I was. And that's how I met the chief operating officer of Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield. She would
Amazing.
go to that salon,
Right.
and I would have never seen her because I was in the back doing the stock room and in the warehouse. But because I got moved to the front, I was able to see her. She's the one that asked me for my resume while I was a junior in college, still working at that store. And I was like, "Yep, I have a resume," and that's how I got my first internship at Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield. So
cool.
I interned there for 2 years, and then that's where I started my full-time job after I graduated. But I always have to tell that. I said, shampoo changed my life. I was like, I always have to tell that story because
that's
how
a
I got my
great
first
story. I
job.
love that. It just shows you how synchronicity, really plays a role. Like the other little while ago, we were just talking about how mentorship, even if it's unseen by the mentee, plays such a powerful role. But
Oh yeah,
same thing with just synchronicity. If you pay attention, like you were paying attention to the contents and you were attentive to your job. You weren't less like regretting it or resenting it. You were grateful for it and you were attentive to it. So you wanted to bring improvement to some process and learn, even if it was just beauty products. I love that. So that's a great lesson for everyone. It's like, whatever you're doing, do it all out. Even if it's
100%.
temporary, like an internship, or even if you're down in your luck because you lost your job and now you got another opportunity and you're like, oh, well, I'll just do this until something else comes along. Do it all out, because the next opportunity will present itself as a result of that, right? And for you as the COO coming in, you're getting that front office opportunity.
Yeah, 100%.
That's
I always
amazing.
say you never know who you're going to meet, so every day is an opportunity for your next role. So you're always interviewing.
Absolutely.
You're just always on an interview. That's kind of have to think. Yeah.
Always on an interview. I love that. That aligns with my martial arts master, because I studied karate in New York as well with a guy named Tadashi Nakamura, grandmaster of Seido karate. I don't know if you ever heard of Seido.
Wow.
They're pretty much headquartered
No.
in Manhattan. It's
Okay.
a great program. He had like 300,000 or 400,000 students around the world. Like a really well-known karate guy. He came over to the United States to run Kokenshai from Masayama, and then he had a falling out with him. And Masayama, his thugs tried to kill him. And anyways, they made peace, and he started Seido, I think, in 1979 or 75 or something like that. At any rate, he was also a Zen teacher, and so every Thursday night he had a Zen class, so the senior students would go, and I ended up joining that as a white belt, and he would give these little chalkboard talks at the end, little koan lectures, and one of them was
cool.
One Day, One Lifetime. And that was basically what you just described. It's like every day you have an opportunity, right, to determine the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, by the way, from the warrior's perspective, that it may be your last opportunity, so make it count.
Yeah.
Like, it
100%.
just always stuck with me. I've got a chapter in my next book titled after that. Like, I just really revered his teaching. Yeah. He was my mentor who changed my life.
That's awesome. I love the sentiment of one day, one lifetime. It's just captures it well.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? So tell me, you went over to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and this began your real professional white collar career.
Yep.
And we've heard so much about like the challenges that a black man has or a black woman has in those professions, the glass ceiling, discrimination, all that. What was your experience?
Yeah.
And what is your experience?
So I walked in really not knowing what to expect, and probably just not prepared for what I was going to face.
Really? Okay.
I think that, let me say it this way. So all the virtues and values I learned from my dad were great, but because he never had white collar experience, he was never in corporate America. There was all these unsaid rules that I had no idea about. Like, so I didn't know about corporate culture. I didn't know about, the water cooler
Mm-hmm.
and the in and out groups. And it's not what you do, it's who you know. Like all those
Mm-hmm.
things that you just kind of learn. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know. So I came in eyes wide open, assuming the world was
Egalitarian system, right? Like your dad taught
exactly,
you, right?
exactly. You work hard and it pays off, right? So type of thing. I wouldn't say that I've dramatically faced discrimination. Like I wouldn't say that, but what I think that I learned is, wow, it doesn't matter how hard I work. It doesn't matter my production or what I produce. It doesn't matter how polite I am. There are going to be people that potentially are in positions of power that have assumptions about me even
Mm-hmm.
before I open my mouth.
Right.
And so I just had to learn how to overcome those assumptions. And it could come across, they call them microaggressions. I think,
Yeah.
people are just, sometimes there's just people that are just not nice people. And you just
Yes,
have
of
to figure out
course.
how to
Yeah.
navigate nice people. And I think early in my career, I would blame myself for the actions of others. Like, oh, he didn't give me eye contact. He spoke to me condescendingly. He didn't give me a raise. I didn't get this. I didn't get that because of something I did. And I think I had to mature over time to learn that sometimes these things are out of my control. It has nothing to do about me. It's that
Right.
it's them.
Right.
So that was one of the big lessons for me. The other thing I did was attach my value to how I was perceived that I was doing at my job. So if I
Mm-hmm.
got a very good rating and a good bonus, I was like, I feel really good because the company says I'm good. And then,
Mm-hmm.
but then, if if you don't do it, if you don't have as good of a year, or you do struggle on a project, I literally was like getting depressed, like, oh my
Right.
goodness, I have no self-worth because this project at work went south, and that's totally unhealthy. Like to attach your personal value to a project or personal value
Yeah.
to work. So I think early on, with because I did not have a mentor, I did not have anyone around me that knew how to navigate corporate America. I didn't know about corporate culture. I didn't know about all the unsaid things that occur. I kind of just was stumbling upon them accidentally without
Right.
knowing, type of thing. The
Did you
other thing
see?
is, oh, go ahead. Yeah,
Okay. I was gonna
no,
say,
go
did
ahead.
you see anyone else get derailed by those things and like end a career early because they just found it hard to navigate?
I did. So, um, there is a thing that I learned early as a kid. I remember my dad told me this. He's like, you can't control what people do to you. The only thing you can control is how you react to how people treat you.
One
So
of the most
someone can,
valuable lessons anyone could learn. Yeah.
100%. He's like, someone can spit in your face. What
Right.
you do next is the most important thing. And this happens
Right.
as, being African American in America with the judicial system. Like a cop can stop you. How you react to that cop is all about you. Are
Right.
you irate or do you comply? Like that's up to you. That's up to you.
That's
And then
right.
you suffer the consequences of those decisions. And so, yeah, I saw people derail. Like someone says a condescending comment and you go out, you fly off the handle.
Right.
No one remembers what the condescending comment was. All they remember is that, wow, John went crazy. What happened? He like started
Mm-hmm.
yelling, and
Yeah.
that's it. You
That's
can't
it.
say, well, someone said something mean to John.
It's
No,
because of
you have to.
that. Like, no, no, you're
Right,
the one that lost
right.
control. Wow.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I definitely saw people lose their cool, uh, say, or give it back. So, like, a leader is mean or gives the cold shoulder and they give it back, because I think what I learned in corporate America is, discrimination in the old days in America was the white hood and the noose. The new form of bias is I ice you out. I give you a cold shoulder. I don't invite you to the
Right.
meeting. You don't come to the
Right.
happy hour. You're not involved with the things that we're doing. You're not on the email chain. Those are
Mm-hmm.
you don't get the nice project. You get the crappy project. And so those
Mm-hmm.
are harder to like point out and say, oh, maybe it's not discrimination. Maybe it's just your boss is an asshole. Like, there's so many there's so many different
Or
ways to look
both.
at it,
It's a
or
good
both.
chance it's both. Right?
And how you react to it's so important. And I've seen people just derail their career because they come out with just fire and fury, and they absolutely look insane, and everyone looks at them.
Right.
So it's like, what's wrong with you? You lost your cool. Like, that's not professional. So
Right.
yeah.
That's fascinating. Such a good lesson, right? Emotional control is really, really important. It doesn't mean you can't fight for justice and do what's right, but by losing control in that moment is not going to get you there, right? It's not going to help
100%.
anyone.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm at Pepperdine getting my PhD in global leadership and change, and I hear a lot about critical race theory, and it's just taught as if it's just gospel. It's just like, don't even question it. It's real. And so I don't know, like I'm white, like, so I don't see it, but I could see it if I could look from someone else's perspective. I could probably see it if someone pointed out like where it existed or how it existed. And I haven't studied it much deeper, but I'm just curious, like what do you think about that? Is about the systemic nature of racism in this country?
Yeah, it's a great question. So this is the way I think of it. So you have a group of people that came to this country, and they were here, and for a generation. So you're talking, they came in the early 1800s, or maybe late 1700s, up to 1865, when slavery was finally ended, and they were not allowed to read, and reading would be a form of punishment. So you have a generation of a family that's here that was not allowed to read. Plus, you have what happened with the purchasing of slaves was families got separated. So
right.
people would say, I want that big guy and I want that girl, and so they were separating families as they chose who they wanted to be on their plantation. So you have separation of family, where we know how important the family unit is,
Right.
and then you have lack of education, because we knew if slaves knew how to read, they would revolt. So we have to keep them not from reading so that we can keep them subjugated, right? So okay. Then they're free, 1865, and then you go from 1865 to 1964, another 100 years of they're free, but they're not. So you go through Jim Crow, all these other types of things. So they couldn't vote, they couldn't make their own money. If they did make money, they weren't making a lot. If they did go to college, it was like they call it a talented 10th. It was a very few and far between that were able to go. And then 1964, now we're in modern society. Everyone's free. Great. So it's like you are at the starting line, but when you're about to run the race, there's some people who have an anchor on them, right? Their grandparents and their great-grandparents, no education, no land, no
families divided.
Families divided. And then there's other folks that I have education, I have my family, I have my nuclear family, I have land, and so we'll run the race. Don't get me wrong. I don't make any excuses for anything. I was like, we'll run the race. You just have to have the acknowledgement of what came before.
Yes.
We're not blaming the past. We're not saying the past is the predictor of the future. Just need to acknowledge what transpired, because so much of your history is important. The one thing that's interesting is like 9/11. Never forget, the Holocaust. We can't forget because we'll be doomed to repeat it. And then for some strange reason, slavery is, that happened, so long ago. What are you talking about? Why do we talk about it? And so, I'm like, these big traumatic things, it's never forget. Let's make sure we don't repeat it. I will never endorse or condone someone who blames their suffering in 2023 for slavery. I'll never condone that. But what I will say is, they had a different start in life than someone else did.
Fair enough.
And so I think
agree with that.
the recognition of that is all I think we should acknowledge. Beyond that, it shouldn't be an excuse. It should never be an excuse.
Yeah, I think where the rub is with a lot of the cultural discussions is it's not a discussion, right? It's a bunch of opinions and shouting, right? So you have, a large group who say, well, reparations and, like we were done wrong, so it needs to be fixed. And a large group of people on the other side are like, well, that wasn't me. You know what I mean? That happened 100 years ago. It wasn't me who did that, so why should I pay for that? and so the point is that both are right. It's like,
Yep. Yep.
it's like with politics. I'm a post-conservative, post-liberal, post-democrat, post. I don't want any label. That's why I love that
Yeah.
new group that's forming called No Labels. Like,
Yeah.
we got to move beyond the labels and
Yeah.
have conversations, right?
Yeah.
And open your heart to the fact that everyone's right and everyone's wrong.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll
Everyone's
give
right
you an
and everyone's
example.
wrong.
A
Go ahead.
great example of that is like affirmative action, which is a very controversial topic. And
Yes, it is.
the way I view it is this: a school is better when there are different thinking and groups of thoughts that's in the classroom, so that they can be debated. Because if you have group
Diversity,
think,
in other words.
you don't, yeah, diversity, you don't get tested. Great. By no means do we want to lower standards for a specific group of people, because one, that's detrimental to the process in general, but it's also detrimental to the student that you accept, because
Right.
then they know, they're like, technically you
Right.
wouldn't be here unless we lower the standards, right?
Sets their expectation as less than. Yeah.
Exactly. But I do think there's a recognition that if I have the same exact two students and I'm trying to decipher, okay, of these two that they have same GPA, same this, same that, same that, of these two, what should I do? And I have one spot left, I would land on what would be the better experience for the class body. Like that would be where I land. So I think when you're trying to break ties, diversity can factor into the equation.
Right.
It shouldn't be an excuse to say I lowered the standards. And that's like a very pragmatic approach to it. You never hear that conversation in the news. It's always,
No.
they took my
I love
spot.
that. Right.
And
Exactly.
so.
Or
like
I
your
deserve we
students-
deserve that spot, right?
Right. Exactly.
I am very grateful for my doctoral experience because we have an incredibly multicultural program. I'm one of probably maybe, out of the entire graduate school in my year, maybe like 5 white men. It's fascinating. So it's been very good for me to be in a room sitting next to people of all different races and cultures and to just have these kind of conversations with us. One of the most valuable things. I wish I did it when I was 30 instead of my age right now, which
Yeah.
is
I
not
think
30.
unfortunately, 31.
31, exactly.
No, I do think our country is still, we're nowhere near a melting pot. We're still, like, I think they call it a salad bowl. So even though we're a very diverse country, we're still in our own pockets. And
True.
people can go their whole lifetime and not have true interactions. Not just I pass someone in a airport, but like true interactions with someone who's a different culture, a different background. Most of our divisiveness, I think, derives from the lack of exposure to other cultures. I think that's what it comes from.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And social media allows yourself to kind of wall yourself off and to get into that
100%.
echo chamber, and that's dramatically magnified division in this country.
Yeah.
And really hope that we can figure out how to fix that in the next 5 years. Otherwise, it's going to tear us apart. So,
Hey, on that, if I could just say,
you go ahead. Yeah.
on that note, I love that you brought up social media. So this happened to me. I realized on my feed that because of who I'm friends with and what my friends post, that I was getting a disproportionate share of any type of altercation that was race related. So anything that was like someone in a supermarket and it's a white person and a black person and there was a fight.
Was this
And
the
so-
algorithm doing it, or
It was exactly. It was the
Interesting.
algorithm.
yeah?
And so I remember I was like, wow, that became my world. Like I'm thinking this happens every single day, every single second.
Right.
It happens, but not to that degree. And I remember having to like cleanse my, Instagram or Twitter feed because I was like, I somehow got into a little rabbit hole where this is all I'm seeing, and that
Wow.
can enrage someone if that's all you see. And I think that's happening to people all over the place.
Of course.
Whatever bias you have, that algorithm will find you and show you what you want to see and prove that you're right.
That's
We
right.
have to like take a
Exactly.
step
Well
back and
said. It's so
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Well said.
So
Yeah. I mean, I think what started out as like a really useful service has descended rapidly, over the past 10 years into something that's really, really dangerous for this country. So like we said, so hopefully we can fix it. If not, just stop using the stuff. You know what I mean? I use social media just for my business, but it's like I have a team of people who post that stuff. I don't actually, someone sends me something on Instagram, like by text or something, it takes me to the page and it says I need to log in. I'm like, nah, I don't log into
you're
that.
better for it. You're better for it. You're better for it.
Exactly. So now your book is called Way Up. Tell us about some of the lessons or stories. I know we've already covered a few, but like what were some of the other insights that you wanted to share to help other professionals like you kind of succeed at a high level and navigate some of the issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and bias and nasty people, who just don't see things your way?
Yeah, 100%. So I think the first thing is the book is the way up, climbing the corporate mountain as a professional of color. The first thing I wanted to call out was that it is a mountain. It's not a corporate ladder. And so I wish when I entered
That's an
my
interesting
entry-level
distinction.
job,
For you, it's a mountain, right? Maybe for a white guy, it's a ladder. Just one rung at a time. Every screw up, you get promoted.
So I called it out because I said, I wish when I started my job as entry level, I knew it was a mountain. I knew that I had to prepare for this climbing of a mountain. So I actually start out the book talking about my trip to Thailand, where I was in Chiang Mai and climbed Doi Antanan. And it was like, man, when you do a mountain climb, like you have a guide, you have extra food, you have change of clothes, you have all these different things to prepare for the trip. And here I am coming into entry-level role in corporate America, just like showing up in flip-flops, like, hey, I'm here. And so I start out saying,
shorts on and flip-flops. Yeah.
like, if you really want to play in this, sphere of corporate America, you got to understand the rules, and you have to understand this is going to be an arduous trip and trek, and just get prepared for it. That's the first piece. The second piece was. This is like one of my favorite phrases. So have the courage to make a million mistakes and the wisdom not to make the same mistake a million times.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
So what happens is, so you're a person of color, you join corporate America, you look around you, there's not a lot of people that look like you. So immediately you're kind of now a little bit quieter because you feel like you don't know who to talk to and how to feel like you feel included in things. And that could be your assumption of what people are doing, and that could also be what people are doing, so you have to kind of check that too. And you're then least likely to take chances, you're least likely to raise your hand and ask for help, you're least likely to make mistakes, because now you're just all in your head on do I fit in, am I accepted? And that can derail a career, because I tell people, your peers are not thinking about if they're accepted. They don't care. They're just doing their work. And then now you're using your mental capacity to worry about if you're accepted, which means you can't give 100% to your job because you're distracted on trying to think if you fit in. And so the have the courage to make a million mistakes is, even though you feel like you're the other, even though you feel like you don't belong, even though it's awkward, even though it's uncomfortable, get very comfortable being uncomfortable and make mistakes. Make mistakes. To make mistakes means you have to take risks. You have to take risks. So raise your hand, ask for the tough jobs, say you want to do it, meet new people that you would never talk to. If you're at a happy hour, don't just sit in the corner with the people that you feel comfortable with. Like, go meet someone new that doesn't look like you, and really get out there. You have to put yourself in a position where you can make mistakes. And then the second piece of it is, the wisdom not to make the same mistake a million times. If you make 100 mistakes, that's 100 new lessons. And so you're going to be that much smarter than the other person who's playing it safe. But if you make the same mistake a million times, then you deserve to be fired. So shame on you.
Shame on you.
So you got to learn from your mistakes. Don't just make them. You got to learn from them, type of thing.
Yeah, we used to
So
say in the SEAL teams that there's no such thing as failure, just a failure to learn.
exactly.
Sorry about that.
That's a great way to say it. Yeah. Yeah. And then the last big lesson is really one, the importance of mentorship. And so I talk about in the book where the term mentor comes from. You know, Homer wrote the Odyssey. Odyssey is about Odysseus. He goes, fights in the Trojan War, leaves his son Telemachus behind. Who does he trust to raise his son? A man named Mentor. And I think
Right.
people don't understand the gravity of what a mentor truly is. They don't think of it
Hmm.
as like, this guy left his son for a couple of years and trusted one man to raise him. That's a mentor.
Yeah, that's a
And so
mentor.
when, right, right. So
Wow.
at work, when you're like, I have a mentor, it's like, is he really your mentor? Like, is this your trusted advisor, father-like figure that's taking you under their wing to show you the ropes? Or is it just a guy you get beers with to complain about your boss? Like, there's a
Right.
difference. And so just trying to explain like what a true mentor is. And if you have one that's like that, you have to be a good mentee. So I actually have a
Hmm.
whole section in the book that explains before you even ask for a mentor, are you ready to be a mentee? Like, are you ready to have the agenda ready for your mentor? Reach out to them, have respect, keep things in confidence with them. Like, are you ready for that type of relationship?
Hmm.
So that's one of the big lessons too.
How did you find your mentor? How did that come about?
Yeah, I got lucky. I got lucky. So my mentor that I mean I talk about him all the time. His name is Jeff Grayling, Irish
Hmm.
guy with red hair. I started my
I had already
full-time
see
job.
that just goes to the way the mindset is. Like I assumed that your mentor was another professional black man, and it wasn't. It was
It
an
wasn't at
Irishman.
all. It wasn't at
That's
all.
awesome.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
and a great story too. So I started my full-time job at Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield. Little did I know that when you buy a suit, the pockets are sewn in and the like the pocket where your pocket squares are sewed in when you get it, and you're supposed to undo them,
Right.
right? I didn't know. So I'm there my first week, my first 2 weeks. He introduces himself. He was a VP of the department. I was like a entry level analyst, and he asked me if I wanted to come get coffee with him. We got coffee. We start chit chatting. I was nervous as hell because I'm like, he's a
Hmm.
VP. I don't know what to say. I don't want to sound stupid, and he made me feel very comfortable. It was very relaxed. And he's like, "You want to stop in to Brooks Brothers with me?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So we go into Brooks Brothers, and very politely and cordial was like, "Hey, when you get these suits, the tailor will open up the pockets for you, and you can use them." And it's like, and where you put your pocket square, those get opened up too. And then in the back, you get a double vent suit. They put little clasps on them, and you just open them up. And it was like the nicest tutelage and the
Yeah.
nicest way to provide feedback. That's like, I see you in the office. I see you got your
Got your
your
nice new suit with the buttoned up pockets.
and you
That's
gotta
awesome.
you gotta you gotta unsew them and open them up. And ever since then, like, we were off to the races. So it was always I got coffee with him in the morning. We would talk about the industry. He's like, "What do you want to do?" I tell him what I want to do. He would advocate for me. He would put me on projects that were tough. I could come to him at any time, and he really took me under his wing. To this day, I still talk to him. He's a great guy, and I just remember how nice he was, and he didn't have to do that for me. And so I
Right.
always feel this indebted to other people to do that for other people as well.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense, and so then that leads to the question: is how does one become a really good mentor? I mean, you just modeled one for us in your Irish friend, but like, if someone says, I think I'm ready for mentorship," like, how do they know, and how do they become a really good mentor?
Yeah, I think what I've learned is my first foray at mentoring was I wanted people to become me. And then I learned a true mentor helps people become themselves. And
I love
so
that.
it's when you have something to give back and all you're doing is shepherding them. You're kind of
Right.
like the bumpers when someone's bowling, just to say, go back to the left, go back to the right. You're kind of just a little, and you shepherd them through their own process of growth. You never give them
Hmm.
the answer, never give them the answer, but answer their questions and guide them. At least you remember where their North Star is. Like, hey, look up. Don't forget. Are you going the right way? You're kind of
Hmm.
off. bump back, but you never give them the true answer, and you're ready to mentor. The other thing I think is a misnomer is you need to go to like the CEO for a mentor, and you actually don't. It's usually someone who's one level or two levels above you could be the most amazing mentor because they just came from where you got. Well, you want to get to where they are. And so I think the other thing that, entry level people are like, I need to talk to the senior vice president. It's like, no, if there's a manager or a director, they're at a perfect level to be a great mentor to you. And then the last thing I'll say is a mentor and a boss are two different things. I think some people are like, oh, my boss can mentor me. It's like, no, your boss is your boss, right? And you want to you have your relationship with your mentor to understand how to work with your boss. If they're one and the same, it's too close. It's not enough degrees of separation.
I agree, and the objectives and values might align, but the what's his best interest or her best interest may not be yours, right? So
100%,
it's not going to mentor you
100%.
on a career change. That's going to be that would be a tough conversation. That makes sense. There's a lot of, just like our conversation earlier about critical race theory and position, people just getting locked into positions. There's a lot of kind of interesting discussion about DEI, right? You hear ESG and DEI, being thrown around as buzzwords, diversity, equity, inclusion.
Yeah.
My perspective is it's really important. I'm in concurrence with you that diversity always trumps homogeneity, especially diversity of opinion and diversity of cultures and all sorts. But if you have diversity without inclusion, then that gets shut down, right? All the benefits start to go away. So
100%.
This is where you start to see that diversity and inclusion do go together, right? They're hand in glove. And then equity, right? It's like, okay, yeah. I mean, why is it that pay is 20% less or whatever it is, 14% less for one group over another when they do the same work? Like that doesn't make any sense. So we got to fix that. But it's like, I know there's a lot of statistical weighting and stuff that gets in there, and people like fight over that. But like, I'd love to, as a senior executive now, after this long mountain climb of yours, what's your take on diversity, equity, inclusion, and how do we bring out the best of what those words really mean, so organizations can flourish as a multicultural organization?
It's a great question, and I love the question, and to give this a lot of thought. So I think what our country unfortunately did wrong was post George Floyd, post COVID, we ran to diversity, equity, inclusion. And so if you look at the stats, and you can see in the headlines, the chief diversity officer role skyrocketed after 2020. They hired all these people to come in. They hired all these consultants to come in. And then the first thing they did was bias training. And so then they told all of their employees, you're bad and you're to blame for why America's the way it is. Right. And so... So like,
no, it's funny because that's exactly what happened. I didn't, I own my own company, so we didn't do that. But I just heard a lot about it, especially in the government, like in the military, and they're like, supposed to be fighting, getting ready for a war, and they're sitting there doing this crazy training, learning about how bad they are.
And so, and the crazy thing about that is like we knew these companies didn't have as much diversity, so the message was going to the dominant group, and it's like, you're going to tell 80% of a company that they're bad and they're the reason why the company's not good. So I think that was like the total worst way about it. This is my value proposition for DE&I. McKinsey did 3 studies in 2014, 2016, and 2018 to look at Fortune 500 companies that have the highest profit margin. In every study, they found the most diverse companies performed the best, and they performed 30% better than any other company. So any company that had more diversity, and equity and inclusion keeps your diversity, because if you don't have those two, then you're going to lose your diversity. They performed better. So now you hook in the CFO. Now you hook in the CEO. Oh, this is not just window dressing and
Yeah, it's
something nice to
bottom
do. It's
line
not
impact.
just, it's bottom
Yeah.
line impact. Because anything that's nice to do when the recession hits is the first thing to go.
Yeah.
So when we started laying off people after COVID, what was the first people to go? It was the chief diversity officer. Because like,
Mm-hmm.
well, this is, on the liability side of the ledger, so we can cut. And then it's not revenue generating.
Mm-hmm.
Versus having a conversation to say, these Fortune 500 companies like American Express have diversity, and they're trumping Visa and Mastercard in
Mm-hmm.
earnings per share and in growth and all these different metrics. So so you have to set the basis on this is not an altruistic thing to do. This actually drives to the bottom line. Okay, cool.
Right.
Now you get over that. Then someone says, well, why? Why? Maybe it's not the diversity. Maybe it's just those companies perform well. The reason why is because diversity brings in different thoughts, which means you eliminate groupthink.
Right.
And when you have multiple, everyone has bias. So when you have multiple biases, you're able to mitigate bias better, right?
Interesting.
So,
Say more
these
on that. Yeah.
companies, yeah. So these companies that make these really dumb mistakes, they launch a product and they get egg on their face because, people are like,
Yeah,
I
like
can't
Bud
believe
Light
you are so
recently.
insensitive. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I can tell you that those issues happen when there is a lack of, when there's groupthink. And
Right.
so you only make those decisions at a corporate level when the
When no one's
board,
saying that's stupid.
right? And the way you get there is because there's groupthink. You get
Right.
there because there's groupthink. So that's why these companies perform better, because they have different people around the table that have different opinions, and they're fighting and they're gnashing it out. It's not pretty. I think people think like
Yeah.
diversity is pretty. No, diversity
No.
means there's more angst, there's more discussion, there's more disagreements, there's more input from different sides, but you get to a better outcome. It's like pressure makes diamonds. So
Right.
whatever idea you have,
Right.
it's going to have a multitude of people that say something about it, and then you're going to come out with a better product. And I think explaining that diversity is not pretty. It's messy and it's disagreements, and but you're better for it. And then two, this is a bottom line play. Do we want to make money? Don't we want to make money? Let's make some money,
Yeah.
right? I think
Yeah.
that's the better way to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion versus this like bias training that always people always do. That never works. It never works.
No.
You know.
That's great. I love that discussion. And not only does it make for better decisions, but it makes you a better person because, you get out of your own little echo chamber and you have
100%.
to,
Yeah.
your ideas have to stand the test against people who have completely different perspectives in life. And so it grinds you down too. And you get stronger from that and you get
Yeah.
less, sensitive to every single word coming out of someone else's
Yeah.
mouth being
Yeah.
a wound, right?
Yeah.
And that's like
And
we're in the SEAL. We had to get real tough, real quick in the SEAL teams because we took risk at such a high level that we were always screwing up, but the consequence could be really high. So the feedback
Yeah.
was extremely direct, and if you
Yeah.
couldn't handle it, you are gone. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, I think a diverse organization, like you said, it's not all kumbaya sitting around and we just have this suddenly coalesce into this diverse viewpoint. No, it's sausage making on the way there, and it makes
Yeah.
everyone more resilient in the process.
Yeah. I was going to say one piece as you said that it just dawned on me. So, one thing that happens is so human nature is that people, for some strange reason, human beings are tribal.
Yeah.
So, if there's white people and black people in a room, maybe the white people will huddle together and the black people will huddle together, just because they just feel a form of, comfort. Now, if everyone's white, maybe, I'm just making this up, maybe the urban people, the people
Right.
from urban neighborhoods that are white will coalesce together, and then the rural white people will coalesce together. And so, like, it doesn't matter who's in the room. Human nature is we're going to divide ourselves into and try to find our clusters, right?
Yeah, it's interesting.
So it's hard to demonize that. That's human nature. So rather than trying to demonize it, like, well, why do you always hire women? It's like, well, it's a female, and so she hires lots of women. Like, rather than demonizing it, say, let's have a diverse leadership team. So if they all hire people that, seem to be in their tribe, at least the leadership team's diverse. So then all the employees that they hire will be diverse. And that's another way to get at it too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
human nature is human nature. People do like to coalesce around who they know. We have to be aware of it. We have to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that it doesn't mean that we're hiring unqualified people, right? You want to make sure they're qualified. But the nature of when you have more diverse leaders, you're going to naturally have more diverse employees. That's the other reason to do it too.
Right. That's fascinating. Well, we got to wrap this up here. We've been going for a while, but so just what's next for you? Like, do you have aspirations to be CEO of Blue Shield, or what's what's on your plate?
Yeah, so I think I would love. I ended my book with let's keep climbing and reach the top together. So
Yeah.
my journey has not ended. I'm a senior executive, but I haven't got to the CEO level yet. So I'm definitely charging towards that.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to amplify all the messages from the book, and so I do mentoring. I will talk to anybody. If they find me on LinkedIn or wherever, I'll always be happy to have breakfast with someone and try to just share with them my story. But the book
Nice.
I was able to reach so much more people than I could. And so I just want to amplify the voice, because there's a lot of people out there that feel stuck. They feel like they can't move.
Right.
They've done everything, and hopefully this is a breath of fresh air for them. So that's also what I want to just keep doing.
Awesome.
And in teaching, I love being able to see new students and sort of have a hand in how they think about the world moving forward. And that's really the three goals I have moving forward.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, best of luck with all that, and we're here to support you and any way that we can. And so, your book, The Way Up: Climbing the Corporate Mountain as a Professional of Color, I love that. That's out, right? It's available on Amazon and whatnot.
It's out. It's on Amazon. It's in Barnes and Noble. It's everywhere books are sold.
Awesome. And how do you like people to reach out if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, the best way is Instagram, Errol L. Pierre, or
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn. And I'm Errol Pierre on LinkedIn.
Errol Pierre. Awesome, Errol. Well, thank you again very much for your time. This has been an enlightening conversation. I really appreciate it. And hoo-yah to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mark. It was great.
All right, friend.